Daniel sees a vision in Daniel chapter 8. He sees this vision of this goat and a ram. Now, the ram has two horns, but one horn is bigger than the other. And we're going to see in a minute that this ram represents the Medo-Persian Empire. In fact, this isn't a guess. The text itself tells us that it represents the Medo-Persian Empire, which tells us what the bear, with the bigger on one side than the other, represented in chapter 7. Again, the Medo-Persian Empire. You can go back and watch the video from the last live stream if you're confused about that. So we see a ram with one horn bigger than the other, the Medo-Persian Empire. That's because the Persians ended up conquering the Medes, and so the Medo-Persian Empire was really the Persian Empire as it progressed, because one side was way bigger and stronger than the other, but there were two sides to it. And this ram is killed by a goat. Now, the goat, interestingly enough, the goat was the symbol of Alexander the Great. It was his I don't know if they would call it, if it was on his banner or not, but that was sort of, they considered him the goat because of where he came from in Macedonia. And this goat represents Greece. This is going to be told to us in the text, so I'm not making an assumption. We're going to read it in just a moment. And the goat comes and kills the ram, and the goat has one strong, powerful horn, but then the horn is broken, and 4 horns take its place, which is exactly what happens in history. The Medo-Persian Empire was conquered by Alexander the Great, lightning fast speed, but then immediately upon conquering the Medo-Persian Empire, it was like the day of the celebration, I think it was, after he conquered the empire, he died. And immediately his generals start to war over who's going to take control, and it ends up splitting up into 4 different pieces. The empire. So there's 4 Greek kings over the Greek Empire. And this is explained to us in this text. Let's read it here, starting in verse 10. This is his vision. It waxed great, that is the goat, even to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the host. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm going a little further, because after the goat got 4 horns, it says, verse 9, there came forth a little horn out of the horns, which waxed exceeding great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. This is a king later on in the Greek Empire who's going to get really great. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. Now we know who this is. This is Antiochus Epiphanes, the Greek king who came into Israel and forced them to, he actually sold the high priesthood of Israel to a man who wasn't a Levite, who wasn't actually a legitimate priest. And the legitimate offerings of legitimate sacrifices ceased. He offered a pig on the altar. He put up a statue to Zeus in the temple, all that kind of stuff. This is what it's talking about, this Greek guy, and because he's talking about this one horn on the goat, right? Now, watch what happens, because this is the basis of the Abomination of Desolation that he's going to talk about in Daniel 9. So if you just opened up your Bible, started reading Daniel 9, you're like, what is all this stuff? Understand it's tying into chapter 8. So I've got to explain chapter 8 just a little bit before we jump into 9. Verse 12, a host was given to him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. It was cast down. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saint speaking to another, and said unto the certain saint which speaketh, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And this is almost exactly the amount of time between when Antiochus, in fact, we don't know the exact amount of time, but it probably is the exact amount of time, the exact number of days. And in fact, since we know the Bible is accurate and true, it certainly is the exact amount of time from the day that he sold the high priesthood to a non-Levite until the Maccabees retook the city of Jerusalem. They revolted. They retook the city of Jerusalem, and on what they celebrate at Hanukkah, they cleansed the temple and lit the candles and had that purification ceremony. So this is what happens during the time of Antiochus. He comes in and he desecrates the temple so that it's all the sin in the temple and the sacrifices are no longer valid. Now we'll just skip down to verse number 20. Verse number 20. And here's the interpretation. When Daniel asked for the interpretation in chapter 8, it says, "The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia." See, we're not guessing here. We know what these are. We know now who the bear is. The bear is the same as the ram. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that between his eyes is the first king. We know that. That's the king of Greece. That's Alexander the Great. Interesting that Daniel predicts this before it happens. It's very, very amazing. And also it tells us what the leopard is in chapter 7, who's got 4 wings, right? And conquers the bear. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it. 4 kingdoms shall stand out of the nation, but not in his power. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. In the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told is true. That means how many days? The vision of the evenings and the mornings? That's true. Wherefore shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Okay, so there's the interpretation. Now let me draw you to one phrase in verse 13. What this Antiochus Epiphanes does is called in verse 13, "How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice," when they're asking about those days, "and the transgression of desolation." There's the phrase that's first used here and is going to be used throughout the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 9, and then again in Daniel chapter 12, to talk about what we call the abomination of desolation. The transgression of desolation is what it's called in verse 13. And it's talking about something in the time of the Greek Empire, Antiochus Epiphanes. And by the way, guys, Greek Empire is 200 years-ish before Jesus said, "When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet." So when Jesus is on the earth in 30s AD, he says, "When you see," meaning in the future, "the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet." Well, you can't be talking about this one. This one is done by a Greek king, and it's used as an example of a one that's going to come later. That's what Daniel 9 is all about. This is a picture of what we're going to find in Daniel 9. That's the point. That's the purpose. And so with that foundation being like, this is pretty... this isn't really argued, right? So I'm not going to get into the details of stuff that's not argued very much. I'm going to give you the basis, and then we're going to move on, because we want to focus in on the things where people disagree. People don't really disagree on this. It's pretty obvious. Daniel 8 is giving us a abomination of desolation done by Antiochus Epiphanes, the Greek king, in the 100s BC. And then it's an example of something that's going to happen later, after the time of Christ, clearly in the Roman Empire. And the where we get that is found in Daniel 9.